It's true, Chad. You're half a hillbilly.
Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys.
Welcome to the Eight Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, this is Liam, and this week we watched 2010's Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. That's right, you heard me correctly, 2010. A comedy horror that takes the killer hillbilly genre from films such as Deliverance and Wrong Turn and turns it on its head. We follow our hapless heroes, Tucker and Dale, as they try to fix up their vacation home / killer cabin, whilst a misunderstanding from a bunch of naive college kids, in true horror fashion, the youngest kid being at least fucking 35, leads to a shitload of accidental deaths. Honestly, a health and safety supervisor would have a field day with this film. This is a classic tale of never judge a book by its cover. Oh, and Chad's a dick. Before he shows he's a dick, he's a dick.
He is a dick.
He is a complete dick.
Yeah, but you need him to be a dick for this movie to work. You know, that is the thing. You've got like three leads, not including Chad, of course, who are three of the sweetest characters in the world. Again, a major reason why this works. But you need a psycho on the college kid side for it to. I know it's a comedy, but even to work conceptually, you need that one head case. And in fairness, he's such a dick, and they do enough at the end of the film of explaining his background for you to go, yeah, that's about enough. I can live with that. That's kind of, every time somebody says, why don't we call the cops? Every time somebody asks the obvious question, there's, Chad will pop in and just say something insane. And at first, you're like, all right, they're kind of going a bit far with the crazy college kid. But then when you find out he's half serial killer hillbilly at the end, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that explains pretty much everything. That's fine. My one issue with this film has been explained in the last 5 minutes. I'm cool to go now.
How's that for a bedtime story mind that his nan tells him every night? Oh, by the way, your parents were attacked by hillbillies. Your dad's never been found.
Yeah, it's an adorable story.
His nan is a bedtime story. Oh, and he covets that axe. I've never seen somebody love an axe as much as him.
I mean, I spent most of my time just looking at the clobber, to be honest. I mean, Chad may be more guilty than anyone, although everyone outside of Tucker and Dale are actually pretty guilty of this. This is peak 2010 clobber. There's so many dodgy polo shirts. He's got like that classic half tucked in look, which was popular at the time, the giant white belt. Even, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely adore Katrina Bowden as Allison in this film.
Yeah.
But she couldn't be dressed any more 2010 as she tried. Those weird jeans she's got where they kind of rolled over at the top. I don't know what.
And they weren't done up either. It was like she was too big for those jeans. The button was just, her fly was just unzipped half the time.
Well, it's the weird thing, isn't it? Because obviously they're the kind of college kids you're supposed to be able to, on the surface level at least, relate to. And then you've got these two hillbillies. In 2022, you would do much better being dressed as Tucker and Dale than you would as the college kids. Like, you think about beards have come in and that kind of trucker look. It's not as popular now. But if you wore I'm saying this because I dress more like that. If I wore a flannel shirt, a trucker cap, and had a big beard, which is pretty much what I wear every day, I don't think people would bat an eyelid. But if you had that kind of popped collar, turn of the noughties look, I don't know, man. It's aged really poorly.
Looking at the both of us now with facial hair and our hair just not done up or anything. Give us a bloody trucker cap and just a half-opened check shirt, which I've got in the other room.
Dude, I've got so many trucker caps. Yeah. I've got we're not far off Tucker and Dale, which is not an issue because they're so adorable. And again,
you said about the clobber, right?
Yeah.
Is that one kid, the one running away from the bee? Or running away from Tucker, running away from the bee. Was he wearing what they call it a gas station in America? Was he wearing a gas station attendant's uniform?
Yeah, that was the thing for a while. Again, those have been in and out of fashion. They've not been in fashion for a while. Again, very much 2010. But I've owned a gas station attendant shirt, albeit...
Of course you fucking have.
It would have been around 2000. I owned one of those.
Okay.
And they have just popped in that. I'm sure my brother's owned one before. I think he was asking for one recently. Either that or a bowling shirt kind of thing.
Did they have enough material to make one for you?
Well, I had a custom made, so it's absolutely fine.
But, in case anyone's new to this, Liam's a fucking giant. He's 16 feet tall.
Yeah, just throw that in there 3 minutes into the podcast in case anybody isn't aware. But yeah, I mean, his top is strange. I'm not just saying this because I've owned one of those before. But I would, again, suggest that in 2022, you could probably get away with wearing one of those, certainly to a greater extent than that kind of pop collar 2010 look. Although, I got to be honest, I don't know what's going on with what kids are wearing nowadays. I think it's more kind of like late 90s, early 2000s now, isn't it? That seems to be the look.
Dude. What kids are wearing nowadays?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think I mentioned it before. It's only happened in the last 5 or 6 years when I've become truly detached from youth. Like, I have no idea what's going on with kids anymore. Like, I don't know what they do into. Like, you see all the stuff with video games. Like, I love video games, but I don't play them in any way similar to how like kids play them. Clothes, no idea. Music, I'm lost. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
I'm 40 in a couple of months, and since I was 15, I'm pretty sure I have dressed the same.
Oh, really?
Jean shorts, or jorts as they call them in America.
Oh, so you fit in pretty well with Alison, because she's pretty much wearing jorts.
Jean shorts, odd socks. People hate me for wearing odd socks. But
I kind of hate you for wearing odd socks.
My argument with the odd socks is, what do you do if you get a hole in the other one? Do you waste the other sock? Because I don't.
Oh, dude, one of the things that's changed since I've moved in with my wife, admittedly, that was like 15 years ago now, is we've just become like absolute killers when it comes to socks. As soon as there's even a hint of a hole, like they're both gone. They're both gone.
You would hate my wardrobe because some of them are threadbare. Because Christmas.
I can't deal with that. Like, I went out with my friend. God, we're supposed to be talking about Tucker and Dale, but it's like we went out. I think it was like Aberystwyth or something like that. A bunch of us, and obviously we're all staying in the same place. And some of the states of my friend's socks will haunt me for the rest of my life. The problem is, as soon as they take them off, I get to see their feet, which is even more shocking. Anyway, the movie
and a t-shirt and a check shirt, only one button done at the bottom. I've been dressing that. If it gets cold, outside, I'll put a hoodie on. No, I'll keep my shorts on.
See, there's always that one side go away shorts in the winter. But
I've been dressing the same since 15, so I can't talk about kids' fashion at all.
Oh, I feel like I can judge you sons of bitches for sure. But beyond that, beyond the strange dress, culture of 2010s America, I mean, the most amazing thing about this movie is that this is one joke. This is one joke, and they stretch it out over 90 minutes. This is an SNL sketch. Like in any other hands, they're just like, well, this is like, you can probably run this out for like 10 minutes maybe. They're like, no, we're going to turn this into a 90-minute movie. It shouldn't work. They're like, all right, what happens if the two hillbillies were ostensibly Albert and Costello, and the kids were the psychos and the hillbillies were the good guys? It should have just ended there 10 minutes in. But because they've got Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine, and obviously a great script, somehow they make it work. I think most people agree that it runs out of steam towards the end a little bit.
When it becomes,
for the most part, it's like, it works.
I like they try. Okay, the college kid then becomes the killer, and all of a sudden he's the film. Yeah, it kind of. I agree with you. It kind of loses some steam towards that end because I don't know. It felt like they didn't have a natural conclusion, so they had to come up with that. But again, it kind of turns the horror thing on its head. What's meant to be the hero of the piece becomes the villain. So I totally get that. I wanted to ask you, right? You mentioned about Tucker and Dale. Do you think, though, and he was really upset when he found out that Alison and her friends judged him, because they saw a hillbilly. He kind of brought it on himself, though, because who goes to talk to a bunch of college kids carrying a fucking scythe?
Yeah, I think if he looks back on that moment with, I don't know, a touch more clarity and realizes what he was doing, I think the whole point is he doesn't realize what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, he's so terrified
because he was talking up on a 6-pounder jar of pickled eggs.
I don't get me wrong. This actually made me quite want pickled eggs. I love pickled eggs.
I love a pickled egg. But a 6-pound, he was eating them like a bag.
No, that is, I mean, pickled eggs, I think you should probably stop after 2 max. Not a whole jar. That's insane. And plus you got the whole thing, like, I wouldn't eat like a whole jar of pickled eggs full stop. I certainly wouldn't eat a whole jar and then go talk to a girl. And I certainly wouldn't do it carrying a scythe. So yes, it was a poor choice, but I guess they're trying to get a message across at that point, because that is very much at the end of the film. But again, like, it's a ridiculous concept, him walking over carrying a scythe. But because it's Tyler Labine playing Dale, you buy into it because he's just so charming. Even like, you have the romance between Dale and Alison.
Yeah,
that shouldn't work on screen. That should be like, oh god, this feels so forced. Oh, like the super hot college girl is going to fall for like the overweight hillbilly. But because he's so likable and she's so charming, you're like, I kind of buy into it. Again,
Yeah.
they probably do just enough from a narrative perspective. Oh, she works on a farm. Chad's clearly a psycho. She's kind of hanging around with them because she should, because she's like the hot college girl, but she really doesn't fit in with them. So again, by the end, when they're going out on a date, I'm like, I can buy into this.
Yeah,
and, they doubled down on the idea of having the alternate. It's not just, the college kid's the bad guy. It's the husky guy out of the two guys. He's the real hero. Usually in any other film, it would be Alan Tudyk's character as Tucker.
Yeah,
he would
and
be
he's
the
just-
one who gets the girl.
Bless him. He's the one that took a pounding.
I get battered.
Yeah, nothing happened to Dale, but everything happened to Alan Tudyk. You said about Chad, right? If this was any other, I guess, situation where she didn't end up in the boat of hillbillies, I mean, he was roofing it and doing something bad to Alison by the end of the weekend, wasn't he? Like the
Chad?
way, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if
I
he's
can't get
roofier.
over how much of a shitbag Chad is, and I know you said he's meant to be a shitbag. My God, he had he's that frat guy. He's probably taken so many sorority girls roofie down to his frat basement, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a horrible.
Oh,
horrible
he is an absolute shocker. And I can't. What's the name of the actor? Please, it's not somebody I was familiar with. Jess Moss.
Yeah,
He's
the only thing I
actually,
don't
beyond
like
the
is in
fact-
one of those Final Destination films.
Yeah, which is actually, there's links to this film, which we'll mention in a moment, but he's another one of those. I mean, I think he's maybe more guilty than any of them of looking about 35. He just doesn't look like it's, and he does, another interesting thing with him is that he doesn't look like your average, I don't know what you call it, college kids kind of group leader. Usually think they would be taller and bit, like he's quite short.
Yeah.
And he's not the most handsome guy in the world either. I don't know why he suddenly thinks he should be able to get Alison, who's, let's be clear, wildly out of his league.
Yeah.
But I guess he's that sick in the head that he
I think it would have been if you look at them all, Jason would probably be the leader. Brandon J. McLaren.
Yeah,
I think he would have been the leader. I mean, you look at like Chuck, who, why would you look down the barrel of a fucking gun? Mitch definitely fit his character. He was the one wearing a gas station attendant's uniform. He was the the guy who was like, okay, let's settle this. It's just a misunderstanding, blah blah blah. And then
yeah. He was
So
like the more
kind of-
almost level-headed kind of
and he
thing.
kind of-
That's why they had to kill him off first.
I know he turned into a zombie pretty much straight away as well. I know we need to cover a whole section on all these deaths, but when he ran into the tree branch and that
The wasp.
the wasp landed on his nose. My God, he was grayer than he should have been, I'm sure. I mean, I've never
He
seen
did-
somebody run into a tree branch. But
No,
he looked like
I've
an
never seen
extra
it.
from The Walking Dead at that point.
No, he did look dead very quickly. And it was one of those things I was wondering in that moment, because they really do zoom in on his face. And it's not a joke that they follow up on, really. But the wasp kind of lands on his nose. And of course, it is strange that he looks already so ill, despite that, admittedly, he does have a tree branch sticking through his chest. But he has this like almost moment of realization when the wasp lands on his nose, like, oh, it's just a misunderstanding. Like he's the only one who has that realization. But it's a great way to start. And I think that was like conceptually what they started with this film. It was just like, well, what was if the hillbillies were the good guys? And the first image they had was the wasps and Alan Tudyk's character chasing him and him running into a tree kind of thing, which makes sense because it's the most, there are a few homages in this film, the most obvious being the Evil Dead 2 homage when they kind of get geared up to go out and fight. But the other obvious one is Alan Tudyk running out the back, and it's pure Leatherface. The way he runs around the Evil Dead 2 cabin,
Why would you still walk up to a cabin, mind, if you're a bit scared and you hear a chainsaw?
Oh, yeah. You just turn around and you're just like, fuck that. You're just like, there's just no way I'm doing this. If you suspect that these hillbillies are Deliverance-style hillbillies, you hear the chainsaw, you're like, no, fuck that. But peer pressure does weird things to people.
You know about peer pressure. When they were doing the paper, rock, scissors, they could see who knocks the door. And he was like, fuck, best out of 7? No, move it. And then you got Chad, who's like, oh, I'm the tough guy. I got the axe. And he's like, move it, bitch. Like, oh my God, you go and knock the door, mates. Like,
yeah, but you need him to survive until the end, I suppose.
Yeah,
but
I know.
You mentioned Final Destination earlier, and that's what this film bizarrely most reminded me of, because I mentioned the fact that this is a one-joke movie, which it is. It's, okay, what happens if all the college kids accidentally kill each other? That's basically the joke. And they have a big misunderstanding, but it basically runs for 90 minutes. that again shouldn't work when you're dragging out that long. But what happens after because they set out this story really early in this film. I thought, going back, because I hadn't seen this film for a few years, that they would play up on the idea that Tucker and Dale are the evil hillbillies for longer. But that is abandoned almost immediately. Basically, they do enough to tell you that the college kids are confused. Like they see them and go, oh God, they all look evil and stuff. But with it in the shop, like right at the start of the film, immediately like, oh no, these guys are adorable. They're lovely guys, and they think the college kids are psychos. But to keep the movie going, basically, you're just hoping. Well, you're just waiting to see what the next death's going to be. Like, how imaginative are they going to be? And it's it became more and more prevalent in the Final Destination films. The first film's actually really good, and the second film's pretty ace. But by the end, there's hardly a plot. They're just like, wait until the next overly elaborate death scene, and that's kind of what happens in this film.
It becomes like what are those machines called where I can't even remember, the chaos machines, when you press you flick a switch somewhere and then all of a sudden a fan turns and it knocks a marble. What are those machines called? Rube?
I have no idea. I know what you mean though.
Yeah,
but
that's what Final Destination becomes at that point. Somebody trips over a stairs at some point, and then all of a sudden a guy gets a ladder through his eye, if I remember, in one of the scenes. So
there's quite we'll talk about favorite scene later on.
Rube Goldberg machine.
Oh yeah, I got you. But no, it's strange because like so much of this film is predicated on physical comedy, and physical comedy is really hard to do successfully. And it's not something I'm usually a fan of. You only have to take a look at last week's podcast, The Fifth Element, and how much I hate Lee Evans, for instance. But it does seem to work in horror films. You think of if you're asking the question, how highly does this rank in the series of horror comedies out there? The obvious comparison is Evil Dead, and that's awash with horror comedy, but it totally works for that film. But yeah, I mean, outside of this and Paddington Bear, I'm not sure if there are too many physical comedy, that I'm a big fan of, but it totally works in this film. It seems to be unique to the genre. I don't know.
Right, we've talked about it now, so let's go through the deaths. Right, let's see if we can go through them in order as well. Okay. So the first one, if I remember rightly, it was the gas station kid running into the tree branch.
Yeah, well, obviously we're not going to mention the fact that there's a bunch at the very start, the disappointingly 1990 sepia-toned flashback. I'm not sure, but just to be clear, I'm not happy about 1990 being sepia-toned, by the way. I remember 1990, and I'm not having it as fucking sepia-toned at all.
I mean, that could have been a scene from Wrong Turn.
That really could have, yeah, totally could have.
So,
but yeah, sorry. So we're not going to count those. So the kid's getting killed, yes. The first one is the kid running away from the bees and running into the tree branch, which is fucking awesome. Yeah.
And then they decide, right, that he's left him there as a message. Like, how did they think they killed him on that tree branch?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, if it wasn't an accident, it's actually pretty horrible because the tree branch is still there. They've taken him arm in arm and run him into it. Yeah, it's pretty gross, actually.
Yeah. So the second one then is another. Well, I mean, the second two then are side by side, aren't they? Because there's the other tree stabbing where he runs at them for what does Dale call it? The shitter hole. The shit hole, yeah. They're making a dig her own grave. Jesus Christ. He magically manages to get his spear stuck into the ground and land on it and slide down.
Again, it's brilliant when you watch it from Dale's perspective. It's just this kid's like, oh my God, what the hell's wrong with these kids? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because in this point, they're all trying to kill Alison at this point. Like, he's thinking, I
love how quickly they just become exasperated. Like, what the hell's wrong with these kids?
Yeah.
They're all coming out here, they're killing each other. Jesus fucking Christ.
One of the best ones is then the kid who has a Swiss Army knife. Now, I appreciate the Swiss Army knife has a lot of uses.
Mm-hmm.
Against a guy that has a chainsaw you think is a killer? Maybe not.
Probably not.
You run at him. Again, you trip. And then I don't know, did he trip or did he jump at Tucker at the exact moment Tucker moved?
Oh, he jumped at him, 100%.
Okay, so why would you, in your logical mind, jump at a man who is that close to a wood chipper?
Well, that's the thing, though. At that point, it doesn't make any sense. But I can imagine as they're kind of, completing the script and obviously setting up the set pieces, which is the most important part of the film, arguably. They're like, how many times can we have one of these kids trip? Like, how many times can they trip over their own feet? Like, that would have been 2 back-to-back where they've just been, it's like, they're just the clumsiest kids. Don't get me wrong, these kids are the clumsiest kids in the world. That's part of the joke. But yeah, I think he's dived at him to attack him with a penknife, and he's just dived directly into the wood chipper, like a sucker.
I mean, hopefully he's gone straight away, because that is a terrible way to go if you're still feeling that.
Well, that is the thing. If you are going to die by wood chipper, you want to dive into it. And arguably you don't want to go in foot first.
No.
Fuck that. That's the worst. And you don't want to be kind of eased in slowly. You want to dive in head first and end it as quickly as possible. I mean, I've not put any great thought into this, but I can imagine that would be the preferable way to go.
Yeah.
You definitely, if for some reason he dived in foot first, that's going to be a long day. It's still gross. And one of the issues maybe why this movie actually flopped, because make no mistake, this movie was a flop. And we'll get back to the list of deaths in a moment. But I was like, this movie didn't even kind of make back. I think it's made back as money since, because it's something of a cult classic.
It's become one of those cult classics, yeah.
But yeah, it had like a $5 million production budget. It didn't make that back. And I was like, it did pretty well at the Venice Film Festival. I was like, why didn't it find an audience? And it's because it doesn't fit quite into either worlds. The problem is, it's probably a bit too violent to work as a straight-up comedy, but it's also a bit too gross to work as a comedy, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't quite fit into either world. And similarly, I think they put down one of the reasons that they thought it flopped was that it didn't quite fit into the indie bracket, and it didn't quite fit into the mainstream bracket, and subsequently kind of fell through the gaps. Like, even if you go back and watch something, again, the obvious comparison being Evil Dead 2, it's violent, but it's not it's not kind of dragging a kid out of a wood chipper violence and having his entrails kind of falling or being dragged over your face. Like, they really go for it with some of the death, which I'll let you get to in just a minute. But it was just as we were talking about, because I was trying to think, I was like, why didn't this movie do better? Because, I mean, and obviously you're on the same boat as me. We adore this film, and spoiler alert, we recommend it at every opportunity. When someone's like, I need to watch a new horror film, I'm like, you almost certainly haven't seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Watch this, because it's such a brilliant movie. But I think that is the reason it was a tough sell, because it's too gross to be funny and too funny to be gross. So yeah, bizarre middle ground. But yeah, sorry, carry on with the kills. I do apologize.
Okay, no. I mean,
it's the next one. The next one's the cop, right?
Yeah, it's him on that beam, which is an obvious booby trap, isn't it? Whoever they bought this cabin from was the killer.
Yeah, 100%. And, talk about kind of setting it up before, like it's set up early in the film. You're like, well, someone's clearly getting that in the face. Yeah. But the great thing is, and again, the shock is not just the fact that it ends up going through his face, which we all knew was going to happen. It's the fact that it really goes through his face. Like, it goes into his head. You have the bit when he's walking past, when he's still just about alive. But one of the nails is like sticking out of his cheek. Like, they always go that extra mile to make sure, this is like, if you walked into the room, say, for instance, and you're watching, like you hadn't been watching the film, and you just saw the cop walking out the cabin with that in his head and the bit sticking out of his face, you wouldn't think, horror comedy. You'd be like, fucking horror. It's that gross.
Right up until the point, Tucker looks at him and goes, he's okay. He's going to walk it off.
He's going to walk it off. Yeah. I love just before that, and it is a new section we're going to have, and I am jumping all over this, is favorite scene. And I think for a lot of people, they will pick that as their favorite scene, the wood chipper sequence. But I love the bit when, but my favorite bit is actually just before it, is when the cops show up. When the cop shows up, and Tucker and Dale are outside, and they're holding the kid's legs, and he's already been in the wood chipper. So we have had a doozy of a day. It's just, and like Tyler Levine's Dale, sorry, I should just call him Dale. He just keeps giving away all the facts. It's like, we got a girl back in the cabin. She's asleep because I hit her on the head with her. You could just see like Tyler just like completely losing his shit. It's like, dude, what are you doing? We're gonna get so fucking arrested. But I thought that sequence, like having the physical comedy of them holding the kid's legs, and obviously the added grossness of, you can still see the entrails coming out. But that bit in particular really, I thought, summed up their chemistry, and their chemistry is fundamentally what not only holds, because this film could have been funny based purely on the premise, I suppose, but what makes this film great is those two, 100%.
That line from Alan Tudyk as well. He's heavy for half a guy.
Oh yeah.
Weak when he said that.
There's so many great quotes in this film. Although, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I just wanted to get back to the deaths. We're
Go
nearly there, dude. We're nearly there. I know you're itching to move on. We're nearly there.
No. It's just because if I'm given the opportunity to bring up one stupid point, I'm like, this will fit in here. I'll just throw it in. But no, we will get through all the deaths for sure.
It is then the kid who wanted to go and get the cop in the first place, and I don't know his name, but he manages to pick up the cop's magic gun because that gun fires a lot of shots for a
It does. It does, yes.
And as I said earlier on in this episode, he looks down the barrel.
Yeah, but again, even before that, I love the bit where Dale says, "You've got to take off the safety," and Tucker's like, "Take off the safety? Like, what are you doing?" It's like you're telling him how to fucking kill us.
Yeah, it's
but like they probably again do just enough where he's waving the gun round a lot. Like he doesn't just look down it. He waves it around and it just happens to go off as it waves past his face. We'll just about allow that one. But yeah, of all the deaths, that's arguably the dumbest. Although, again, saying, now that you brought it up, I was like, diving at someone with a penknife, I'm not sure if that's the best way to go. Yeah,
and then you get to the, I don't know, the dumbest section when they're having their counselling session in the cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Brandon James McLaren outside. Todd, I think his name was. You've got him outside with the blonde girl, and they think, right. Chad said, if he doesn't come back in 15 minutes, we got to come in and get him. So he bursts in with a weed whacker, and takes out his girlfriend's face.
Yeah, that's nasty. That's really nasty. Yeah.
And then Chad, for no reason, chucks a lamp at Brandon J. McLaren and sets him on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty dumb.
And then, all this while, the blonde girl has been trying to have a cigarette for all bloody film.
Suddenly lights it up.
She can smell petrol. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to light up a cigarette.
Yeah, it's strange because obviously the other deaths are all pretty elaborate and they're all like separated out. And I can imagine maybe that on paper, at least, that they had more deaths.
Yeah.
But this film, and we mentioned the fact that it borderline kind of outstays its welcome, but just about kind of gets away with it. I can imagine they've got to the end of the film because all of a sudden you're adding in the narrative, and it's like we haven't got time for all these elaborate kills, but we've got three kids left we don't need here, so they kill them all at once in one big elaborate blowout where everybody gets dead very quickly. Considering like the first three deaths are pretty separate, split out, and they're all, pretty high concept. That is just, all right, let's just kill all of these three kids as quickly as possible. And it all, again, goes very Final Destination at that point.
The one who got hit in the face with the weed whacker, she was still alive. That is terrible.
Yeah. That is rough. I'm not sure which, like, again, the obvious one is the wood chipper is the worst way to go. But out of all of, I don't know. Well, actually, no, being set on fire is pretty bad. And then, a weed whacker to the face, that's not much fun.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
they all went
stabbed in the chest and sliding down it as well. That is...
that's the second. I mean, I would take that over all the others, other than shooting myself in the face, of course. But then, do you want to be the guy from a purely embarrassing perspective? What's worse, to shoot yourself in the face or to trip over and die on your own spear?
So I think I'd rather have shot myself in the face because I'm gone. I'm not feeling the pain.
Oh, 100%. From a pain perspective, you want to shoot yourself in the face, but it's the most embarrassing.
From the legacy perspective, I don't want to be the guy to look down the barrel of a gun and shot myself in the face. Like people talking about this. Do you remember that fucking idiot? He looked down the barrel of a gun. I mean, I appreciate the guy who dove headfirst into the wood chipper. I appreciate the guy that landed on his own spear. Mm-hmm. I mean, even the guy who accidentally weed whacked his missus in the face. But this other dude actually stared down the barrel of a loaded gun. That's stupid. It doesn't even compare.
It is pretty dumb. But, we're not afraid to ask the big questions on this podcast, although they do actually ask the big questions in this film. It is a really random question at the start of the film, and I can't remember exactly who asked it, but just out of the blue, he asked, if you dream of sucking dick but never do, does that make you gay? Now, I listened to that, and then I laughed, and then I probably thought about that for far too long. I was like, okay, you don't suck dick. But then I'm just like, how often is he dreaming about it? It's like, if you've never sucked dick, fair enough. But say you dreamt about sucking dick, say, like, I don't know, every night. Eventually, you're going to be like, all right, I'm gay. I think I don't think one dream.
You...
I'm not going to be like, oh, if one of my friends comes up to me and is like, I had a dream about sucking dick. I'm like, dude, you're gay, 100%. But if he came up to me and said, dude, I've had like a recurring dream for the past 4 years that I keep sucking dick, I was like, well, you might be gay. You might be. But
I mean, not so much that, but it would make you curious, wouldn't it? Like,
oh, at the very least, at that point, like if one of my friends comes up to me and he says, oh, I've dreamt about sucking dick like every other day for a year. Eventually, I'm like, dude, you should probably try it. You should give it a go.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be something going. There's got to be a reason. Like, you'll find out pretty quick. Like, if you give it a bash and it's not for you, you'll probably stop dreaming about it pretty quick. Or the other end of the spectrum is, oh yeah, I am gay. I do love sucking dick. But anyway,
I mean, either way, you're going to be happy in the knowledge you know where you belong at that point. So
exactly. Although
I mean, that was Jason, by the way. That was Brandon Jason.
That was it was. Although another big question, I'm not sure how big of an issue you're going to take with this film, but when they said we're going skinny dipping and then they didn't go skinny dipping, is it because the rating or is it because they don't understand what skinny dipping is? Skinny dipping isn't going swimming in your underwear. That's not skinny dipping. Skinny dipping is going swimming butt naked, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying like because I wanted to see all the teens naked.
They did kind of clarify that, didn't they? Because they said, let's go skinny dip. And you get the one guy saying, I'm not taking all my clothes off. So I know because Alison is front and center. Randomly, again, this chick does need that helmet that he gives her at the end of the film. Because why is she on what clearly looks like a slippery set of rocks?
Oh, jagged, slippery rock. She's an idiot. I mean, she kind of gets away. I mean, you talk about skinny dipping. I don't think she ever looks hotter than in that moment when she's.
I liked her in the jorts and the shirt that was tied up around her navel.
I mean, yeah, she looks great. I mean, regardless, but yeah, she is a clumsy bitch, and at least again that they do kind of bring attention to it with the whole like helmet joke at the end of the film. You're like, good Jesus Christ, woman! Like, how many times are you going to get knocked out, fall over, be a clumsy bitch?
They all weren't in their underwear, though, were they? Because the one girl, the blonde who wanted a cigarette, I keep calling her the blonde, Chloe, she definitely had her top off because the camera did not go close.
Did she really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
Not that I paused it for long enough. But
no.
You could definitely tell from the silhouette there was no bra.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Whether she was wearing pants at that point, I'm not too sure because she was half in the water.
Yeah.
But she definitely had no bra.
Oh, fair enough. I didn't notice that, which is surprising for me. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I was just like, and it wasn't just me. I was watching with my wife, and she was actually the one who pointed out. She was surprisingly adamant and passionate about it. She's like, "That's not skinny dipping. These kids are bullshit." I was like, "Well, yeah, they are. There's no getting around this."
I don't get it. You go to a place that how the college kids wanted to go there anyway. I know that was meant to be Chad's idea, but. Did he go there because he knew that's where his parents were kidnapped or whatever? I'm not too sure. But why would you go skinny dipping in a lake you don't know anything about?
Well, they're stupid teens. They're drunk, stuff like that. Like, you know, I guess the idea is like if you were supposedly 18, 19, despite the fact that these motherfuckers are all 35, and you're drunk and somebody says, let's go swimming in a lake, you probably just go you don't want to be the one at 19 to go, well, it might be dirty, I don't really fancy it. It's like that's not going to happen. You just like, if one person jumps in, you're like, oh fuck, we've all got to jump in. And it's even kind of half explains away their idiotic actions when it comes to Tucker and Dale and their holiday home. Is I know the obvious thing is you hear the chainsaw and you run away, but when you're 19, like that peer pressure's there, and you're like, oh, I can't be a pussy. Don't be a pussy. Yeah. I've got to keep going. Like, especially where Chad's holding an axe, like he's making things a bit more intense. But you know, I look back to me and my friends when we were 19. I'm like, yeah, we were pretty dumb. I probably would have jumped in a lake as well.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I can't say anything, can I? There's a scar on my leg from when I did something when I was 18.
Oh, well, exactly. Yeah. And you're the one being judgmental. So, you would have been first in. We would have used you to judge the depth of the water.
I would have been
we'll get Rob to jump in. Yeah. If he doesn't break his leg, then we're fine and we'll follow him behind.
I love how the fact I was such a hypocrite then. Why would these idiots do that? And then I'm thinking, no, at 18, I have the biggest scar on my fucking leg because I did something stupid.
Yeah. So you haven't really got a leg to stand on to carry on the analogy.
There you go. Nice.
I know, it's pretty bad.
Hey, do you know in the cabin, they're clearly rib bones, aren't they, from a human?
Yes.
Yeah. I love it when he taps them like a wind chime and goes, somebody must have been an archaeologist or something.
Well, that is the other thing. Like, they obviously, you know, rather than going down the traditional route, when you think of these movies, the ones that it's setting up, was it Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes, Deliverance, stuff like that. They're nice instead of evil, but don't make no mistakes. They're still really dumb. You need that for the movie to work. If they go in and they see that place, they should just leave. But instead, they're like, "Oh, this place is a fixer-upper," and the whole movie again is predicated on pretty much everyone being dumb. The college kids are dumb. They're dumb. The cop is a bit of an idiot as well. Everyone's a moron in service of the narrative to get from one death to the other. But
the cop plays the typical horror genre cop, though, where he says to you, "Don't go up there," because. Just tell them why. Just say,
I know.
A lot of deaths happened up there. You might want to be careful. And then when he gets there and he's talking to him, he said, "I told you to get away from this place. It's pure evil." Mate, you never fucking once said anything about being pure evil. You said just don't go up there.
Yeah, he said just don't go up there. And his tone changes really quickly because, again, he doesn't know Tucker and Dale. They've just shown up in town. Obviously, you have that bit earlier in the film when they pull him over and it looks like he's sucking his dick and all that jazz. All very funny. Then when he goes up, of course, they're holding the kid's body. They look super guilty. They seem to turn him round on it so quickly, like, oh, it's just been a big misunderstanding. By the time he kills himself, but albeit accidentally by pushing against the beam, he seems to be pretty on board with them. Like, he's not worried at that point anymore. You think any other cop would pull his gun and say, "Listen, I'm arresting you, get in the car." No, he goes into the house with them willingly. And you're like, yeah, that's pretty dumb, dude. And as you say, he's like, "Oh, I told you this place was here." I was like, "No, you really didn't." And I don't know, because there was a murder up there. He was saying as if there was like a curse on the place or something like that. So yeah, I didn't think that really worked, to be honest.
Again, they bought the cabin from, I'm guessing, some sort of real estate developer. Or why didn't the real estate people clean the cabin out?
Yeah, you think they would do something?
Yeah.
It was like, what was it? Like the deal was like buy as is. I guess it kind of leans into the whole idea that everybody locally considers it cursed, in so much that we'll sell it, but we're not going near it. Yeah. I'm not going into cleaning it. It's just, we're selling it as is. You can go and fucking deal with it. We're not touching it. That's what I think would be the approach. But and plus, let's be clear, this film wouldn't work if they showed up and that place had been all cleaned up and it was all lovely and tidy. If it looked rough outside and then you go inside, it's like, oh, it's a nice place actually.
It's the same thing as the end, isn't it? Where it's meant to be, from what I can gather, an abandoned sawmill where everything is working perfectly.
Oh yeah.
Everything. They still have power. They still like it all works absolutely perfectly. That saw is not rusty. That'll cut through Allison like butter. Like
yeah.
That absolute, but no, it's abandoned to the point where there's that that old newspaper article, 20 years old, that looks pristine. That shows he's half a hillbilly. Like,
yeah, and his dad is just him in a wig.
That was printed yesterday, that fucking newspaper article. That wasn't printed 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah. When they're trying to wrap up the narrative and explain away Chad's evilness at the end, everything just falls into place so conveniently, complete with, like, it's such an old school movie trope, just like a conveniently placed news clipping to just explain away the whole story. It's like, oh, yeah, that does look like him on the front cover of the local newspaper, which hasn't aged a day, despite the fact that it's 20 years old. Come on, guys. Come the fuck on. Oh my
God.
It's not my biggest issue with this film. I mean, my biggest issue with this film, honestly, is the fact that Tyler Labine, and apologies if I'm not, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing both his and Alan Tudyk's character.
I think you're doing Labine right, but I'm pretty sure it's Tudyk, not Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk. Okay, so Alan Tudyk. So I do apologize. Alan Tudyk, obviously, he's still gone on to do like a whole bunch of things. And you can make the argument that Tyler Labine has. I mean, he's played like a small role in a bunch of films. Yeah. But when I watched this film, and I think I mentioned it, in previous podcasts, like, you see certain people, it's like John Wayne in Attack the Block. It was Dane DeHaan in Chronicle. When I saw this film, I was like, Tyler Labine is the new Jack Black. I was like, this guy's going to be massive. And it's just not quite happened. And it's like everything about this film, I'm like, I watched it, I was like, this film's going to be a huge hit. Tyler Labine's going to be a massive star. And it just didn't fucking happen. And it's such a shame. They haven't even, I mean, I know a lot of people complain about the fact that this movie hasn't had a sequel. And I know there was talk about it because they had a script, but the script wasn't deemed good enough. So they kind of, pushed back on it. Yeah. But And make no mistake, because this movie, despite being a cult movie, because it did make a huge amount of money, it needs to be a labor of love. It's not like kind of like Hot Tub Time Machine 2, where you get the sequel nobody wanted because it turned into a surprise smash hit. But I got to be honest, like, I don't want a sequel to this film. Like, as much as I love Tucker and Dale, Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk, I can't get his name right. I can't pronounce it right. I would prefer more of an Edgar Wright situation. Like, the thing is, this joke has run its course. As much as I love the characters, I'm like, by the end of it, everything's wrapped up. You've got a bow on it. There's no excuse to make a sequel. What I want to see is those two on screen together, maybe with the same. I mean, Eli Craig, this was the first film he's directed, and I don't know any. He directed Little Evil. I actually saw that in 2017, wasn't bad, and he did like The Tao of Pong, a short in 2004. I don't know anything about that.
And he did the Zombieland TV show.
Yeah. Which I think he only did an episode or whatever the hell it was, but. I mean, this is his calling card for sure. And you think, okay, do a sequel, but I don't want him to do a sequel. Like I said, it should be Shaun of the Dead style situation where you get those two characters together again, or those two actors, sorry, but in a completely different role. Because it's not necessarily that I love Tucker and Dale. It's that I love those two actors together, and they have such great chemistry. So why not find an excuse to put them together again? It's just a shame that it never really happened, other than that one TV show they're in together, which I've forgotten off the top of my head. Oh my God, what's it called?
They were in a TV show together, were they?
Yeah, they're in a TV. Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Oh, of course they were. No,
they
didn't have
together.
any scenes together.
No, they didn't have any scenes together. Yeah. That's not what I'm looking for.
I mean, going off the rails on this episode, because we never do that ever.
No, definitely not.
That fucking TV show is great.
I've never actually watched it.
Oh, mate, it is weird. It is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
But it's
really good.
Really good.
No, I remember when it was first announced and when it came out, I was just like, oh, this looks like the kind of show I'd like. And I just kind of forgotten about it. But the fact that they're in it but not in any scenes together is an absolute crime. But like I said, this should be an Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost situation. Think of another high concept situation for these two guys to be in and just find an excuse to put them on screen together. That's what I prefer.
There was always a rumor as well. And I'm not too sure because I've never, I don't know if I have the DVD. I do own it on digital, but there was meant to be a special feature where you could watch the film from the college kids' perspective and see that they're evil. And you do see that kind of thing. When you see the college kids watching them, like when Dale is talking about how he beat her, and he would beat her so bad, and when he gets back to the cabin, he's going to finish her off and then help him dig the hole. And
and it totally works. Like from the college kids' perspective, if you cut out all the scenes with Tucker and Dale like on their own, going, "What the fuck's going on?" They look like the traditional killer hillbillies. Like, it's not a stretch for them to think, Jesus Christ, they're doing horrible things to our friends. They see their friend just being dragged through a wood chipper. They see their friend being like stabbed through the chest. They think their other friend's been shot in the face. So yeah, it totally works. I've not actually watched it myself because I don't have the DVD. I had to rent this off Amazon.
No, it's not a rumor. It is. It's a special.
No, it is
on the DVD.
It is. Yeah. But I don't have the DVD. That's the problem. So I haven't watched it.
Do you know what? I might have to get the DVD. I'd like to see it from their perspective.
Yeah, it'd be pretty cool. Yeah. But you do get that every so often with these movies. What it reminds me of is something like Memento, where there's a special feature where you can watch the movie in chronological order, and it's not very good. It would probably be the same with this. You'd watch it, and it'd be like, oh, that's interesting. It kind of works, but nobody wants to see the kind of second-rate Deliverance version of this film. Like, the whole reason it works is because it's funny.
Yeah. I wonder if that makes it more of a horror. If you watch
that would 100%. Yeah, of course. There's a 30-minute movie, a 30-minute version of this movie where it's just purely a horror.
Yeah,
100%. But yeah, it doesn't.
I'm buying a DVD. I'm getting.
Yeah, fair enough.
I gotta do it.
But no, that's the great thing about it is the fact that it is a horror comedy, because there aren't many successful horror comedies out there. The obvious one we've mentioned it a bunch of times, Evil Dead. The other one that pops into my head is it's a very black comedy, but something like Dead End, another horror movie not enough people have seen. But
that's the one with Ray Wise where they keep traveling up and down the road.
Yeah, I fucking love that film.
That's another cinema. I wasn't a huge fan of it.
Oh, dude, I love that film. Yeah, I absolutely I love the concept. I find it so creepy. Again, I prefer horror films where you don't see what's happening. Like the whole thing is the mystery of it. Like, they just keep driving, and you can just imagine. It's so easy to put yourself in that position. Like, I can't put myself in a position with Freddy Krueger or Jason. Like, I love those films, but they're patently ludicrous. Where that where you go off a road and then suddenly you realize you just kept driving and suddenly you can't get off the road. The bit where she goes off and runs to the woods and comes back on the other side back to her car. I'm just like, oh my God. Basically, it's a comedy version of the Blair Witch Project. That's what it is, where you just keep running around in circles, only this time you're in a car. So don't listen to Rob on this one. Dead End is from around 2003, I think. It's an absolute...
Right, I said I watched it once, 2003. I watched it in the cinema. I can't remember liking it. That's not saying that it's not good.
Listen, Rob fucking hates that film, but he's wrong. It's a really, really good horror comedy. It's one of my favorite horror comedies. So yeah, go out and watch that.
To be fair, if you like it, it's going to be shit.
Yeah, you might. Yeah, you might. That film's so goddamn good. One other shout out. I love any movie where they throw Pabst Blue Ribbon. Pabst Blue Ribbon is, to my mind, the quintessential American beer. You never see. It's snuck into a few hipster burger joints over in the UK, but for the most part, I mean, I grew up kind of associating it with Blue Velvet, David Lynch's film. But the fact that they're drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, and the fact that I got to drink it in like Alaska of all places, I just think of it as this like quintessentially American beer, which I love.
I can't watch Americans drink beer though, because they drink this watered down shit, and I'm thinking, oh, dude, drink you under the table.
Oh, you would drink them under the table. I don't actually mind American beers. They're perfectly refreshing. They don't taste as much, admittedly. But in terms of just like buying a 6-pack and just throwing them down you, it's like American beers are really easy to do. I prefer that than like a really full-bodied bitter. People get like really fussy about beers. It's like, oh no, it's going to be like a premium beer. I'm like, dude, if you have like 6 fucking cans of a premium beer, you'll be off your tits. It's like, at least with these, if you're watching sports, for instance, American beers are ideal. Because you can just keep throwing them back and you'll just get like a nice little buzz on. And you won't be, like we are in the UK, just completely off your tits.
I can't do, like you said, the full-bodied beer. Like if I got to drink a beer, it's lager. That's what I would drink.
Yeah, me too.
Give me a bottle of whiskey and I'll be happy. I'll just sit there and drink a bottle of whiskey. I'm good.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if you want to get into the habit of it. And in fairness, I think you're already in this habit. Every time you sit down for a sporting event, drink a whole bottle of whiskey. Yeah. Like if I'm going to watch like the rugby, I'm at a Wales game and I look over to the left and you're, and I don't know you at this point, obviously, and I'm drinking a beer and you're just tanning like straight out the bottle, like a full bottle of whiskey. I'm like, all right, this guy's going to be fucking trouble. I mean, that's a lot of hard liquor.
That's the problem. You've been with me. I can drink lagers, and after about 5 or 6, 7 or 8, I can't fucking count. I feel terrible, but I drink a bottle of whiskey. I can wake up the next day, be right. I'm ready to go. Let's go.
Yeah, but let's be clear. This is very unique to you. Like if you're watching this movie and Tucker and Dale are just in the car and they're just tanning a bottle of whiskey straight, you're like, God damn, they are fucking hardcore. Whereas, like, the beers, like, especially because American beers always come in those small cans, which are very, very kind of.
They call them stubbies, don't they? Or is that an Australian thing?
That's an Australian thing. I mean, when I think of stubbies, I think of the little European style bottles rather than cans. I mean, when I see American cans, they're just small cans of beer. I mean, I'm sorry, that's not a very catchy name, but that's what I call them. But it's not unique. It's not unique to America. A lot of other countries have smaller cans, and if nothing else, small cans of beer look adorable. One of the most adorable things in the world is a little can of Budweiser with all the
looks like a
on
shot glass in our hands, dude.
Yeah, it does look ridiculously small, admittedly. But,
also, that says something about the British culture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What are you giving me a small can of beer for?
Yeah, I want like 7 liters of bitter. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Why are you giving me a small can of beer? This is fucking stupid. What am I, a child?
It's absolutely ridiculous. Although they do use beer as a cure-all throughout this film.
I love it.
I love the fact that he has his fingers cut off and he just pours beer on it. His face is covered in bee stings. He just pours beer on it.
Pours the beer on. I thought that was fantastic.
I thought that was brilliant.
And I love the sensualness of Dale. How about I come over there and I pull those stingers out of your face? I would like that very much.
Oh, there's so many sweet little moments between, like when he gets upset because when he like his idea, like Dale's idea of an outburst is telling Tucker that he doesn't really like fishing.
Yeah,
and how upset Tucker gets. Like, oh man, you say I'm sorry, that hurt your feelings. Like, yeah, a little bit. Like it's so that again, it's not just like they have that back and forth. They feel like brothers. Like they're so sweet to each other.
It's
anyway.
It goes back to the physical when they were doing that scene as well. You mentioned the physical comedy a couple of times in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the little thing that Alan Tudyk does that is not really captured properly. Like they don't hang on it, but it's just what his body does. When when Tyler Labine, when Dale rolls over his body,
Yeah.
you then see Alan Tudyk holding his nuts because because Dale is like kneed him or done something. But they don't fixate on it. You just see her in the background.
Just see it in the background, don't you? It's ridiculous.
Like Alan Tudyk. Have you ever watched his new show Resident Alien?
No, I've not seen it. No.
His physical comedy, his mannerisms, because he's an alien playing it.
Yeah.
His mannerisms, the way he is such a fan. But the way, like, how he hasn't become a bigger star.
Well, it's the same with both of them, but yeah, it's crazy. Okay, so should we, I think that pretty much wraps up the film. So we'll just go on to loves and hates. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean,
go for it.
I love Tucker and Dale together. Those two are fantastic. I love the death scenes, the stupidness of the death scenes. They're planned out very well, especially the first couple.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they do rush the last few, but the showstoppers at the start of the film are all belters. Yeah, totally.
And to be fair, I love Alison.
Yeah,
what was her name?
Amazing.
Katrina Bowden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm a fan of her. I'm a fan of the look. I'm a fan of the jorts and the shirt. And,
Oh, see, I'm a fan of her undoubtedly, and she is. I mean, she's, make no mistake. I mean, we're being dicks about it. She is outrageously hot. There's no two ways about it. But she's so good in this film. She's like the secret source of this movie because, again, obviously it's essential that Alan Tudyk.
Just
Tudyk.
Think of two dicks.
Why do we say this at the start of the podcast? If I'd been told to think Alan Tudyk, I would have got this right the whole time. I'll remember Alan Tudyk forever now. But yeah, I spent the whole podcast saying Alan Tudyk when it's clearly Alan Tudyk. Oh, ridiculous.
How do you think I remember it?
Oh, I don't know. Just like any other name. I didn't just... Not everybody has a name, which sounds like two dicks. But anyway, their relationship is obviously the glue that holds the whole movie together. But she spends a lot of time with those two in this film. And obviously a big part of the movie is her relationship specifically with Dale. And again, it's one of those things in this film which could have so easily not worked, but she's so likable and her chemistry with Tyler Labine is so strong that even though because he is like a bit of a dopey hillbilly, despite the fact that he has this kind of amazing memory and he's actually quite smart in his own way, it could have felt so forced. But they're so charming together, and the three of them have such great chemistry that makes such a large part of the film. Like when I think most people, if you haven't seen it for a while, when you think back to this film, you think, oh, you obviously think of Tucker and Dale, but it's really, for large parts of it, it's the three of them together, and the chemistry between all three works brilliantly. So yeah, she's the kind of the secret all-star of this film, I think.
Yeah, that was my three. So you go.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I totally steal your point. And it's kind of fed into mine because, Katrina Bowden is one of mine as well. Yeah. Because I think for the exact same reason. But yes, the real stars, Tucker and Dale, or, Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk. There we go.
There you go.
Now, see? Yeah. You just said at the start of the podcast. So obviously those two together, Katrina Bowden, I think she is, as I say, the secret MVP of this film. And my third being the fact that they managed to stretch out what should have been an SNL sketch into an 89-minute movie, and they do it successfully.
Yeah.
It's one of those things to have that idea. It's a great initial concept where imagine if the hillbillies were actually nice guys and it was all just a mix-up. That's a great idea. But then you're like, wait, you want to turn this into a movie for 90 minutes? That's going to be tricky, but they manage it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hates?
Chad?
Yeah, we hate Chad.
I mean,
I think you're supposed to hate Chad, but yeah, I hate Chad.
Not so much the character, but bless the actor. I hate his face.
Oh, he's got such an annoying face,
yeah.
Which helps. He looks like straight away you see him and like, oh God, I can't fucking stand Chad. Even before he starts like forcing himself on Alison, and then obviously becomes a psycho killer at the end. Yeah. Like right from the off, with the face, the shirt, the belt, the whole combo. You're like, fucking hate Chad.
When he wants Dale off at the gas station, and he does those Karate Kid moves.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, just fuck off, dude.
Oh, he's a tool, back to front. He's the brilliant thing about him, he's an asshole at every stage of his development. From just like douchey college kid to psycho killer, he's just the worst from beginning to end.
The other hate is gotta be the copper. I warned you not to do this. No, mate, you didn't. You didn't fucking warn anything.
He's a pretty dumb cop, that's for sure.
Yeah. And thirdly, I'd probably just be for continuity's sake. I hate the magic gun. Like I counted. There's at least 10 or 11 shots from that gun.
There's also this is one of the things Rob always picks up. Some weird thing no one else is paying attention to, and he's there counting bullets going into wall. But yes, you make a good point. There are a lot of bullets in that gun for sure.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Oh, can I add an extra love?
Yeah, go for it. I always fucking do that.
The friend at the end of the bowling game, the dude with no teeth.
Oh, how the fuck did we mention him? What the fuck? Oh, dude, I was just honestly. We just had to stop this podcast because I had to pop to the loo. I came back before Rob and I was looking at my notes, and the last note says hillbilly friend punch. And I was like, what the fuck does hillbilly friend punch mean? That's what it means. He's the hillbilly friend punch.
Like he's got no team. Like, go and be yourself. So he knocks her over the head, or he punches her out. Then he's dragging her off, and Dale's like, fuck it, I got the girl.
Yeah, it's so bizarre because they spend the whole film doing that whole thing, like you said earlier, like don't judge a book by its cover. These guys are just different. It's a cultural thing. They're not evil. And then his friend, as soon as he says be himself, and let's be clear, this guy has got like 2 teeth in his head, in public, goes over, punches a very young girl in the face, and drags her off supposedly to a cabin to have his way with her. It's a surprisingly dark moment in this film, played for laughs.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we've found out what hillbilly friend punch means, because I was looking at it and I was like, what the fuck? I can't with hillbilly friend punch.
That sounds like a metal band.
It totally does. I was just going to say that. The more I read it out loud, the more I was like, this sounds like a band.
I would literally go and watch Hillbilly Friend Punch.
Yeah, it would get your attention with it. If you saw like a big poster and it said Hillbilly Friend Punch, I'm like, that sounds like the kind of band I want to go see.
You need to speak to Dan, a collaborator we have on this podcast every now and then, because he does.
Oh yeah, dude.
He does he does metal album covers, doesn't he? For people,
you can totally see Dan doing a Hillbilly Death Punch cover. 100%. I can already picture his art style in my head.
Yeah.
And the Hillbilly Death Punch. In terms of hates, I don't know how I feel about this one, because no sequel. Like I mentioned the fact that I don't actually want a sequel. I'm a little sad that we didn't get more movies with Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk. That's my. See, I'm getting it right every time now. Tudyk, and I did think about it as I was saying it. Number 2, the fact that Tyler Labine hasn't become the new Jack Black. All I can think is that maybe he's a little bit too similar to Jack Black, and Jack Black is still Jack Black. You know, in the same way there was that kid in Independence Day who was like a second-rate Keanu Reeves. He was like Keanu Reeves, but he wasn't Keanu Reeves. It was almost a bit creepy.
Yeah, the dude from Gone in 60 Seconds who stole the car.
Yeah. He's like what's his name, the farmer's kid or whatever kind of thing. Well, it's not really his kid, but it kind of, anyway. That's another podcast. Listen to our Independence Day podcast from a few months ago for that story. And my biggest disappointment, and I know you'll get annoyed because it's not directly linked to the film, but how 2010 doesn't feel that long ago to me. But really fucking is. When you watch this film and you see what they're wearing, you're like, oh, this is a generation ago, 2010. I found that very upsetting. But to directly link it to the film, it'll be Chad's dress wear in particular. The collar, the shirt, everything about that. I'm like, not only does it upset me, but I can imagine that I wouldn't have dressed a million miles away from it at some point in my life, also, which I find quite depressing.
I'm going to make you more upset. 2010, you were 28.
Oh, dude, I was old in 2010. Fuck. You know, like I said, there's the sepia tone stuff to 1990. I was 8 then.
Yeah.
If I'm seeing something in sepia tone, I shouldn't have been alive. I was not only alive, I was in primary school. I was buying toys. I was playing with Thundercats, for fuck's sake. Anyway, okay, so yes, I do hate that. I'm sticking to my guns. Yeah. In terms of, before we go to legacies, facts, are there many facts, sir?
Well, before we go into facts, if we're sticking to the film, do you want to do our new section?
Oh, the favourite scene, of course. I kind of ruined mine, so I'm going to let you, grab the floor here, because I already mentioned the fact that mine is the explanation to the cop. It's when they're holding the body, and you just have that charming moment between the two. And, you already mentioned the great quote, it looks like he's going to walk it off. He's going to be fine. Yeah. I love that whole scene. I really think that perfectly encapsulates the movie. You get the body horror of the fact that they're not just holding the legs, you really do see the cutoff and the entrails kind of falling out onto the floor. The dialogue's great. The violence that ensues is all brilliant. So I think that scene in particular encapsulates why this movie works so well.
Well, in true Liam fashion, you kind of dicked on mine as well, because
sorry,
mine was the wood chipper.
Oh no, well that's what I mean. Though I think everybody.
No. Further on, you said everyone's favorite scene is the wood chipper.
Is the wood chipper? Yeah,
when the
you could argue that's one long scene. In fairness,
I suppose
you really could. Yeah.
When he dives through the wood chipper, and you've got Tucker trying to pull him out and do it, and then he just stops there, deadpan, and goes, "You okay?" No, dude. He's not okay.
It's the standout death in this movie for sure. And as I said, you could arguably stretch that all out into one scene, and it is the movie at its strongest. Like they've really set the stall out for what this film is at this point.
When he says to Dale, as they're trying to get the kid out of the machine, the store better not charge me for this.
Oh yeah, dude. And I just, again, it's one of those things. It's not just the fact that this film is funny, despite all the gore. It's that it's so sweet. And again, a lot of this comes down to Tyler Labine. Yeah. He's like, he comes into house, is that your blood? It's like, no, it's college kid's blood. And then he just starts crying. He's like, don't cry. He's like, I can't help it. It's like all that stuff. Like you see, there's all this going, all this gruesomeness, and you're like, oh, they're just so sweet. Even the fact that like Tucker is a bit of a dick, and obviously, he lies to Dale, and he always wants to be kind of the alpha in the group. But fundamentally, their relationship is quite sweet. But if anything, you could argue that with a lesser actor than Tyler Labine, his character would be too saccharine. It would be too sweet, but he totally pulls it off in this film, as he's doing it covered in blood, of course. So yeah, that's
right. Let's move on to facts then. So
yeah, go for it.
The first one. Dale's weird zombie Marge Simpson tattoo.
Oh yeah.
Like it's actually apparently meant to be Henrietta from Evil Dead 2 when she becomes a Deadite.
Oh yeah. That makes much more sense.
But it just looks like a weird zombified version of Marge Simpson.
It's not. I can totally see why somebody would have that tattoo, and I'm sure a lot of people do have that tattoo. But yeah, it's not the best example of it.
I mean, you said about this film being. What was the word? Doomed from the start. It was shelved for 3 years before it was finally released. So if it was released in 10, it was filmed in 7.
Well, again, it's one of those tricky ones where it's a tough sell, because a lot of people would be like, "Well, this is a sketch, not a movie." And then, as I said, it's getting that balancing act right of like, who's this really for? You can. I think they're like at best, and best case scenario did pan out is that this ends up being a cult movie. And that's exactly how it's ended up. But yeah, a tough sell for sure. Despite the fact that it's pretty, like, basically this film was always likely to live and die by word of mouth. Luckily, word of mouth has been pretty strong down the years.
Towards the end of the movie, when Tucker and Dale are reminiscing about catching frogs, and Dale mentions that he used to lick them, Tyler Labine actually did lick a toad in a small role in the X-Files.
Nice little callback there, yeah.
Yep. The opening scenes on the road were shot during a thunderstorm. Fair play, because I didn't see any rain or anything. So
no, I mean, is this kind of like the low key version of like Mad Max, when you have all those night scenes and you find out they actually shot in day and it was all digitized afterwards? It's kind of like the budget version of that, basically.
Yeah. A rough cut of the film was leaked, which revealed various moments when lines are dubbed and when post-production effects are used. It was called a work print. I remember watching the work print. This is how I first watched this film.
Oh, really?
So you're watching the film, and then it says, insert special effect here. And so honestly, so do you know the scene where the kid runs into the tree branch and the wasp lands on his nose?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't see the wasp, obviously, because it's computer generated.
Yeah.
So the film I'm just seeing this kid just go like this with his eyes.
Like, what the fuck?
Darting around. Yeah,
but again, in that moment, you're like, well, he's having a bit of a breakdown, but he did just run into a tree, and he's clearly going to die, so we'll allow
it. When Dale and Tucker save Allison from drowning, they shout out, "Hey, lady!" and nod to Jerry Lewis. I can't do the Jerry Lewis "Hey, lady," but
oh yeah. Didn't even think about that. That's pretty cool. Like you say, this film does have a bunch of references scattered through it, but yeah, I didn't pick that one up at all.
Sasha Craig and Brandon J. McLaren have both appeared in Power Rangers. Sasha portrayed Kelsey Winslow on Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue, and Brandon portrayed Jack Landers on Power Rangers SPD. That's for all our Power Rangers fans out there. You know who you are.
Yeah, we're a bit too old for Power Rangers.
Yeah. After Tucker hits the beehive with the chainsaw, he started running and moving his... Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There's hardly any facts for this one. So
that's all right. We've got a few there. So in terms of legacy, again, we've covered a lot of this in terms of the fact that there was no sequel, the fact that they had a script, but it was deemed not good enough, and the fact that we don't really have an issue with it. As I say, it's one of those, is we don't want a sequel. We just want more of Alan Tudyk and Tyler Labine. Like,
Yeah.
that would be the thing. Is though, you need to get these things right, and it's testament to, again, the director, who hasn't worked much, and certainly in direction. I know you as an actor before, but you get this wrong. And it's like there's a fine line between nailing horror comedy and this becoming Ernest gets scared stiff, or Ernest goes to camp, or whatever kind of thing. Really kind of like send up comedy. But yeah, other than Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, they've worked together since, which is an absolute crime. But as I said, in terms of legacy for me, I look back at the fact that this is maybe the sweetest horror comedy of all time, despite all the gore. It's like there aren't many horror comedies which are this gross, but also this sweet. So, yeah, I mean, but I'm really grasping it, because sadly, other than the fact that this has become something of a cult hit, there isn't much of a legacy of this film, because it wasn't a hit at the box office for the reasons we already mentioned. The fact that it got caught between the mainstream and independent movies, between horror and comedy, and it just didn't tick any one box enough for this to become a massive hit. So I think it's one of those, despite the aforementioned issues with some of the clothing going on, I think it's one of those films that people will just keep picking up for a number of years. People will still be talking about this in 10, 15 years, because it'll be, I don't know anyone who's watched this who doesn't like it. I think that's maybe its ultimate legacy, is the fact that it's just so likable. I'd be amazed if somebody's like, oh yeah, I watched Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and I didn't like it. I'm like, what the fuck? Really? If you watch it in the first instance, you must have a interest in horror. And if you do, this totally works.
You explain it to people, they probably wouldn't want to watch it. But for people who do then watch it, I can't see anybody disliking it. Obviously, people disliked it because it was a bust.
Yeah, but I don't think that was because people disliked it. I think it was just because people didn't see it, and they didn't know how to sell it. I don't think it was I can imagine, what's the thing they call a cinema score? I can imagine if they did a rating for this, I bet you the cinema score would be like A- or something. It'd be super high, because everyone who did see it came out and loved it. But again, like you said, even if you do love it, it's a tough sell. If you're like, oh, it's like hillbillies, but they're nice. And I think maybe if they were homaging, quote unquote, what we would consider more popular horror nowadays, like if you're homaging slasher movies from the 80s, everybody still knows those. If you're homaging hillbilly horrors from like the 70s, it's a much tougher sell on paper. Yeah. Again, you don't need to have seen The Hills Have Eyes or Deliverance for this movie to work. But from a selling perspective, you're like, well, I haven't seen those films, so why should I care? And you're like, yeah, but you get it. The fucking evil hillbilly thing, dude, it's not a hard concept to get your head around. But again, they just obviously found it hard to sell.
Yeah. Fair play. Audience score and review score on Rotten Tomatoes, both 85%.
Yeah, that feels about right. That feels like if this is, and again, we're jumping ahead, spoiler alert, but in terms of rating, I can imagine just 90% of people giving this a 4-star review.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a masterpiece, but it's never, in terms of just achieving what it sets out to do, it just absolutely hits the nail on the head. It's 90 minutes long. It's fun. Yes, we mentioned the fact that the one issue is that it runs out of puff a little bit towards the end, but that's a minor mark against what is an otherwise super fun film and super likable. Just such a likable cast, likable setup, just likable.
Absolutely.
In terms of score soundtrack, it was done by Mike Shields, a composer. I don't know, I'm not familiar with a lot of his work, but he's composing the score for Sonic Prime on Netflix. That's a pretty big gig. That's one of the big shows coming up. And he did a film called Ginger Snaps, which is one of those odd movies I feel like I should have seen, but now I know I'll never watch because it's so like 2000. It felt like Ginger Snaps. You either watched it in 2000 or you never watched it, basically.
Which one was it? Ginger Snaps 2 Unleashed, or Ginger Snaps back at the beginning? Yes, I watched all three of them.
I mean, the only person you need to ask that question to is you, basically. So, have you seen any or all of these?
Seen all three of them.
Of course, you've seen all three of them. Well, I can tell you, I'm not going to watch any of them. The ship has sailed on Ginger Snaps.
It's a werewolf.
Yeah. I know the gist, but I was fully aware of it, and I just didn't see it for one reason or another. And now it just feels like there's no way I'm going back to watch Ginger Snaps.
So Canadian.
Is it Aussie? Of all the things you could have said, I don't know why. I'm just saying, like, I kind of want to see it now. I want to see why it's so Canadian. I don't know what you could have said to convince me to watch Ginger Snaps, but for some odd reason, telling me it's so Canadian makes me think maybe I'll watch Ginger Snaps now. So I don't know. Anyway, in terms of video games, obviously there wasn't.
Sorry, Chad's in it. Chad's in Ginger Snaps.
Is he really? Oh my God, the obscure link between this and Ginger Snaps. Beyond Mike Shields, of course. Unbelievable.
Sorry.
Oh no! Video games, there just isn't a Tyler Tucker and Dale video game, unsurprisingly. But in terms of what would work, I mean, the obvious thing to say is something like Friday the 13th, the game, or Dead by Daylight, those asymmetrical kind of online killers. But rather than the killer chases the kids are trying to kill you, and you are both trying to survive, but also stop them from killing themselves in comedy traps that are set up in like each level. So there's loads of ways to die in each level because obviously it's like a sawmill and stuff like that. And you basically, you don't want them to kill you, but also you don't want them to kill themselves by accident because it makes you look more guilty. And it's like, I was thinking, how would this work? You could even have a hint of, Goat Simulator and Surgeon Simulator where the controls are really awkward. So when if you're controlling one of the kids, for instance, the higher your heart rate becomes, the harder it is to control. So if you see one of the hillbillies, you immediately freak out. So at the start, you're just controlling it like a third-person kind of action game. But as you get scared by your surroundings, the controls suddenly become all fucked up. And like Goat Simulator or Surgeon Simulator, suddenly just doing basic things becomes really hard. And it becomes as much about killing the hillbillies as it does about forcing you. Like, you'll be able to see the trap, but you almost can't stop yourself from falling into it. So that was my kind of stretch at making this work as a video game.
I do it Supermassive Games Until Dawn style, because you can have the college kids, the choices you make to try and protect your friends against the killers leads to your death anyway. So you could have loads of these accidental deaths for these college kids based on the choices you make.
Yeah, yours is better. Yours is much better. Mine. I felt like I was really stretching. Yours totally works. So I'll go with that one. Good shout. In terms of ratings and recommendations, I think I can speak on both of our part because I've already said it. We both recommend this film.
Yeah.
And I think I also gave away the fact that I think everybody on earth would give the star 4 stars. This film 4 stars, I do apologize. So I'm giving it 4 stars. And I'm going to go on a limb and say you're probably going to also give this film 4 stars.
It's a 4-star film. And
it totally is. It totally is. It's easy to recommend and it's 4 stars.
This section usually drags on a bit more, but it's done. 4 stars, recommend by both of us. Because you 100%. Can't say any more than that about this film.
Yeah. And the thing is, we don't need to preach the choir because I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you've seen Tucker and Dale. And if you've seen Tucker and Dale, you've probably already told people it's a 4-star film. I'm recommending it to you. So this is going to come as a surprise to no one. That's been Tucker and Dale, our most recent movie. But this is how strongly
that was my fault. I say my fault. That was my niece's fault. She asked us to cover this podcast. So there you go, Shay. I've covered that for you. So if this is the only episode you listen to, which it will be, hi, Shay.
Hi, Shay. I'm glad you asked for it because it was a great excuse to rewatch one of my favorite films for the last, I was going to say 10 years, but it's older than that, from the last 12 years. Jesus Christ, that is depressing. As for next week, we're going a little bit further into the past, as is tradition on the Hey Guys podcast. So we're going to go for, what is it, 1992's Last Boy Scouts? Is that right?
1991.
1991.
Oh, Last Boy Scouts, really?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen another one of those films. I loved growing up. I love Shane Black. We've done quite a few Bruce Willis movies recently, but a big part of this podcast is finding an excuse basically to go back and watch films that I haven't seen for a long time. And that is one I absolutely adored when I was younger. Again, another film that didn't do amazingly well at the box office. It's a bit of a cult film, and not enough people have seen it. But I have nothing but fond memories of it.
This was
as to whether it's going to hold up, and as to whether it's going to be mega early 90s, I don't know. But I'm looking.
It's going to be mega early 90s. But if it holds up, I say yes. I fucking love this film. Spoiler.
Oh, it's got great. I mean, the whole Shane Black thing is that the fact that it has an absolutely amazing script. And the dialogue's fantastic.
This made history, wasn't it? Because I'm pretty sure this was the one, and we'll talk about it next week. This was the one that was the first ever screenplay to sell for $1 million.
Yeah, this was back in the era when screenplays used to sell for just silly money. And obviously Shane Black was the recipient of a lot of those very large paychecks. And not a lot of them worked out in terms of box office, sadly. I mean, the big one that people associate him with is Lethal Weapon.
Lethal Weapon, yeah.
But he's had such a bizarre career, and again, stuff we'll cover next week is, you think like some of those scripts didn't turn into big box office hits. He's done movies as recently as The Predator, which was an absolute stinker, but he also bizarrely did Iron Man 3, which people are slightly divisive on, but that made over $1 billion. That was a massive hit. So yeah, we'll talk about all this next week, and obviously more about Bruce Willis and Marlon Wayans.
My love for 80s.
Slightly questionable relationship with each other, because I don't think they liked each other very much.
My love for 80s, 90s Bruce Willis films as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, thank you for joining us for Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. And please do join us again next week for 1991, so Rob tells me, The Last Boy Scout. Cheers, guys. Catch you there. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Ta-da.
So where can people actually find us?
Oh, well, people can actually find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at HeyYouGuys80s. You can also drop us an email at HeyYouGuys80s@gmail.com. We like to read them out on the show, so please feel free to send them in. Any recommendations, just get in touch with us. We do like that. And we'd like to thank, as always, Darry Fletcher at Darry Doodles for the fantastic artwork that we're now producing.
Cheers, Darry. And a big thank you to Alexander Ortolan for the awesome intro music. He has no media presence as far as I can tell. He's very mysterious, but makes great music. So thank you very much.
And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye. Hey, you guys!